My name is Sara, a doctor working at a medical complex affiliated with a major charitable organization. This medical complex is essentially a large apartment consisting of 3 clinics. My work is always in the morning. I specialize in gym and physical therapy, which is why my room is the largest, given the presence of medical and sports equipment. I'm accustomed to temporarily leaving my room for one of the other 2 clinics while the cleaning staff cleans my room. One day, I was extremely exhausted and heard a knock on the door. I called for the person outside to enter. The cleaner entered my room and asked for permission to clean. As usual, I stepped out into one of the other 2 clinics. I was so tired that I laid my body on the chaise longue in the clinic, closed my eyes, and decided to rest for a bit. But what I saw made me uneasy. With my eyes closed, I could see everything in the clinic as if it were in black and white or X-ray vision. I opened my eyes quickly, not understanding what was happening. I told myself that what I had seen must have been due to exhaustion. I rubbed my eyes thoroughly, closed them again in fear, but nothing changed at all. I could see every detail in the clinic as if my eyes were open, but everything was in black and white. I calmly observed the clinic with my eyes closed, not understanding what was happening, until my gaze landed on an old chair in the corner of the room. There sat a woman dressed in black. Surprised, I didn't focus on her features. I gasped and opened my eyes quickly. The chair in front of me was completely empty. Frightened, I closed my eyes again, trembling with horror. The woman was still sitting there, her head covered in something black like a cloak. When I focused on her features, I became more scared. Her eyes were completely black, yet they seemed to shine. She was looking directly at me, as if she knew I could see her. Her features were frightening, but her smile was the most terrifying part. Her mouth was unnaturally wide, stretching almost from ear to ear, and her smile scared me profoundly. Suddenly, she stood up and began to approach me slowly. Terrified, I opened my eyes quickly, breathing heavily. The room was completely empty. I was afraid to close my eyes again, but I couldn't forget that she had been approaching me. I had to close my eyes again to see what would happen. When I closed my eyes again, she was very close, having covered the distance while my eyes were open. Her eyes met mine, and she smiled wickedly, making my heart tremble with fear. I opened my eyes in terror, but I had to close them again quickly. I wanted to know what would happen as she got closer. When I closed my eyes, I found her standing right in front of me as I sat on the chaise longue. She looked down at me, smiling that strange smile. My heart clenched in fear. I jerked from my place, trying to remember verses from the Quran to recite to calm myself. When I opened my eyes again, I kept seeing everything in black and white, but this time the room was completely empty. My heart was heavy because of that room. I decided to walk around the clinic until the cleaning lady finished, or until I calmed down a bit. I was very scared and didn't understand anything at all. I stayed outside for a while, but my curiosity was stronger than anything else, even stronger than my fear. I opened the clinic door again and entered cautiously. I closed my eyes, trembling, and looked at the chair. The chair was empty, but unfortunately, the room was not. In front of me, on the floor, was someone sitting, his posture reminiscent of a frog, with his head turned in an impossible angle, looking at me. He resembled the woman closely, with the same black eyes, the same face with distorted features, the same wide smile. He twisted his head to an impossible degree, making it seem like his head would flip over. Before I could understand what was happening, he leaped on his feet like a frog and stood right in front of me, his smile widening in a terrifying manner. I couldn't keep my eyes closed any longer. I left the room and closed the door behind me. When I calmed down and told the cleaning lady, she informed me that, unfortunately, there had been a critical case that passed away in the clinic yesterday, but no one had complained of anything strange happening in that clinic before. I'm writing this to you from the same clinic. Scared to close my eyes. But I must try to understand what is happening, even though I'm very afraid. I live in a house with my mom. A small but comfortable place that suits us well. It's just been the two of us since I was young. My dad left when we were little. And I don't have any siblings. Mom never liked to talk about Dad or their past. And I've always respected that. I don't even know what my mom does for work. She's secretive about it. But I know her hours are long. Starting at 5 a.m. and ending at 11 p.m. Every day, even on holidays. She never talks about her job. We hardly see each other. And when we do, we barely speak. If I need something, I leave her a note. If she wants to leave me money, she puts it on the table. There's always food on the stove. I just heat it up and eat when I'm hungry. Tough life, right? But life is hard, and you have to adapt to survive. I really enjoy school days because I spend about half the day at school. I come home, shower, eat lunch, do some studying, and then go to sleep. I don't have friends or much of a social life. As I mentioned, my mom works even on holidays, so I'm usually home alone. The problem isn't the loneliness, it's the strange noises I hear. I'm not typically scared, but sometimes it gets excessive. I hear terrifying sounds, like something crawling inside the walls, footsteps, things falling, banging noises, and sometimes even muffled screams. Once, I was certain I heard someone asking for help. One day, when I was home alone on a holiday, I heard a sound like a heavy object falling. You know, the sound something heavy makes when it hits the ground. I was scared, thinking someone had broken in. I was in my room, so I pressed my ear against the door to listen, but all I could hear was my own frightened heartbeat. I swallowed hard and opened the door to check the source of the noise. I turned on my phone's flashlight and prepared to dial 911 just in case. The living room and kitchen were empty. So was the bathroom. The only place left was the huge closet in my mom's room. It's more like a wardrobe. I opened it, and it was pitch dark inside. But good thing I had my phone's flashlight. I searched quickly, and it was empty. But then I spotted something hidden among my mom's old clothes hanging there. An old door I had never seen before. A small, old door. Well concealed behind the clothes and painted the same color as the wall. So you wouldn't notice it unless you were looking closely. Curiosity almost killed me. I had to know where that door led. I approached it slowly and quietly, reached for the small handle, and opened it. Behind it was a narrow passageway that barely fit a crawling person. I stood there thinking, and of course, because curiosity always wins, I decided to crawl through it to the end. I held my phone in my mouth and started crawling through the filthy passage. After about 3 meters, I found another small door. Before I opened this second door, something struck me. The smell was horrifying. A disgusting stench of decay, like rotten flesh or something similar. I opened the door and illuminated the room with my phone's flashlight. I discovered a secret underground room I had never known about. Below the door was a damp staircase. I went down, holding my phone to light the way and pinching my nose because the smell was unbearable. My heart was racing, and I was terrified. The room below looked like a woodworking workshop, with tables, woodworking tools, drills, hammers, and nails. As I turned around, I saw something extremely strange. There were 2 beds, and one had a man lying on it, crying. As I approached, I was shocked. The man was covered in blood, wounded all over, his body as if dissected, crying with his face bloody. He begged for help, but I was frozen in fear. His stomach was open, his intestines spilling out. His legs were slashed with knives and bleeding. Even his neck was cut as if someone had tried to slit his throat, and his right hand was severed. He was begging me for help, but then I noticed the second bed, covered with a blood-soaked blanket. I gently lifted the blanket and found the corpse of a child about my age, dead. His body bloated and bluish, a source of the foul smell, clearly tortured before death. The man called out to me in fear, but I was even more scared than him. My legs wouldn't carry me. My mouth was dry, trembling with fear, feeling dizzy. The man called out, and through his pain, he said, "You have to escape. She's coming right now. I can hear her." Before I could move, I heard the sound of a door opening, a small door I hadn't noticed in the darkness. Standing before me was a woman in a white lab coat soaked in blood, holding a large cleaver, also dripping with blood. There, standing in front of me, was my mom. I live in a residential complex that consists of 4 apartments. The ground floor has a small playground next to the complex's entrance. My wife and I live in one of the first-floor apartments. Across from us, there's a nice young couple, about our age, quiet and pleasant. The entire floor above us is empty. Between our apartment and our neighbors, there's a long hallway centered by stairs that lead up to the upper floor and down to the exit, ending with a locked iron gate. There are 2 keys to this gate, one with me and the other with Matt, who lives across from us. Last week, while Kimmy, my wife, and I were heading out, we ran into our neighbors, Matt and Anna. They mentioned that Anna's mother would be staying with them for a week. They told me she's an elderly lady living alone since Anna's father passed away. Recently, her condition has deteriorated. Alzheimer's has completely taken over. They also mentioned that she would only stay with them for a week until Anna's brother could sell her house and find a decent nursing home for her. I couldn't object or accept. It was their choice. Of course. They were just informing me out of courtesy, which I deeply appreciated. I completely forgot about the conversation until one night, around 3 a.m. I woke up to the sound of someone tapping on the glass of the bedroom window, which overlooks the hallway. I opened my eyes to see a tall woman, thin-faced, with long white hair covering her face. When she sensed I was awake and looking at her, she lifted her face, her eyes filled with malice and anger, glaring at me through the glass. I was terrified by her appearance. I reached out to wake Kimmy, but by the time she woke up and we looked again, no one was behind the glass. The place was completely empty. Kimmy suggested I was probably dreaming, and nothing had happened. Shortly after, I heard the sound of a door opening and closing, remembering Anna's story about her mother with Alzheimer's. I felt slightly reassured and went back to sleep. The next day, I met Anna in the hallway and asked if her mother was okay. She smiled, said yes, and then asked if her mother had wandered out of the apartment while they were sleeping. When I said yes, she smiled awkwardly and apologized profusely. The incident didn't seem significant, so I greeted her and went on my way. The following night, at 3 a.m., Kimmy woke me up, whispering fearfully that she heard someone in the apartment. She was terrified, which alarmed me. I immediately got out of bed and started checking the apartment. As I left the room and searched everywhere, the apartment was empty. There was a noise in the kitchen, like someone opening and closing the silverware drawer. I went to the kitchen, turned on the light, and while standing there, I heard a knock on the window pane of the hallway door. Turning around, I saw her standing there, glaring at me with hate and malice. Her look was so full of evil that it scared me profoundly. Then she walked away, leaving me staring at the glass in astonishment. The next morning, I met Matt in the hallway, who apologized for any inconvenience Anna's mother might have caused. I told him it was no problem at all. The situation was minor and didn't bother me in the slightest. The day after, I woke up at 4 a.m. This time, she was standing at the bedroom door, looking at me. This time, she had entered my apartment, and the situation became terrifying. She stood there, looking at me, her hair falling over her eyes, her gaze filling me with fear. It was an unnatural look. I jumped out of bed and ran to turn on the room light. When I reached the living room, no one was there. I searched for her extensively, but the apartment was empty. For the second time, I found her standing behind the window glass, looking at me before she left. This time, I was sure I was scared of her. There was something unnatural about this woman. The next day, I woke up to the sound of nails scratching at the apartment door from the outside. Specifically, that day, I had locked the door with a bolt for the first time. The sound of the nails scratching was annoying and frightening. I walked to the door with terrified steps, peered through the peephole, and saw her standing outside, looking at me from the other side as if she could see me. She was scratching the door with her nails, making an annoying sound. Her look was full of challenge and evil. She said in a creepy voice, "Open the door." Hearing her voice made my heart drop. My eyes teared up, and my body trembled. I was very scared. I told her from behind the door, "Please go back to your daughter's apartment, ma'am." She continued scratching at the door, insisting, "Open the door. I'm telling you." Her voice this time was full of confidence and challenge. I felt that if I opened the door, it would harm me. I stepped away from the peephole for a few seconds, and when I looked again, no one was there. The noise had stopped. But in the morning, the marks from her nails were still visible on the door in a terrifying manner. I was standing there, looking at my door, when Matt and Anna's door opened. They came out with a strange man. Anna introduced me to her brother, who thanked me for enduring their mother's disturbances during this time. He also mentioned that he would be taking her to the nursing home today. I smiled and told them there were no problems at all. Matt said that Anna's mother had made some cookies as an apology gift for me. I was relieved that I would be free from this frightening woman. When Matt went to get her, I was standing there, looking at her in astonishment and fear. She was a short, plump woman with short brown hair. This wasn't the woman who had been terrifying me for the past week. This wasn't the woman who had been haunting me every day. I bid them farewell and pretended in front of them that everything was fine. But in reality, I'm scared to sleep. Very scared. I don't know who this woman is or why she's haunting me. I don't know why she wanted to enter my apartment. I'm scared.